I'm sorry, ma'am, but there's no way you could be sitting in 1A. The flight attendant's tone sliced through the quiet cabin like a blade. Every head turned. Amanda Klein stood firm, arms crossed, her blue uniform pressed to perfection, her name tag gleaming beneath the cabin light. In front of her, Elena Thompson froze, ticket in hand, boarding pass glowing on her phone screen, her expression calm but unreadable. That seat belongs to a first-class passenger, Amanda continued coldly, eyeing Elena's gray hoodie, sneakers, and worn jeans as if they were proof of guilt. Please move to economy where you belong. The words hit like a slap. Passengers began whispering, glancing up from their seats with curiosity and discomfort. One man muttered, "Figures," shaking his head with a smirk. And just like that, 6 minutes of quiet humiliation began. 6 minutes that would change the airline forever. Before we go deeper into this shocking true-to-life story, tell me, where are you watching from? Take a second to subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button and stay till the end. This one will leave you speechless. Elena stood still, gripping her passport and ticket tighter, her pulse steady but her jaw tense. She'd faced this tone before, the disbelief that someone like her could belong in a place like this. "I am in seat 1A, she said evenly. Her voice carried calm authority, but Amanda's smirk didn't fade. "I'm sure you believe that," Amanda replied, motioning toward a younger flight attendant. "Brian, can you verify? There's been a system glitch lately, and some mismatches." Her pause was deliberate, loaded. Brian Foster hesitated, glancing between them, his tablet flickering as he scrolled through passenger data. "It says, seat 1A, but it's marked red. Possible duplicate." A hush fell over the first-class cabin. The man in 1B, Victor Hayes, a silver-haired businessman in a crisp navy suit, leaned back with a knowing smile. "Probably another stolen upgrade," he said aloud, not bothering to lower his voice. "Happens all the time." His words drew a few nervous chuckles. Amanda didn't stop him. She looked back at Elena and said, "Until we verify, you'll need to wait in the aisle." Sophia Ramirez, Elena's assistant, who had boarded earlier, rose from her seat near the front. "Excuse me," she said firmly, pulling out her phone. "There's no mistake. Ms. Thompson was checked in hours ago." Amanda's glare cut toward her. "Please return to your seat. Miss, we'll handle this." But Sophia didn't move. She started recording. The quiet click of the camera was like a match to dry wood. Passengers watched, some pretending not to, but every eye lingered. Jamal Wright, a journalist seated in 2C, noticed the tension instantly. He had seen it before, too many times. A black woman questioned, humiliated, her dignity chipped away under the guise of procedure. He unlocked his phone and started filming, too. "Public record," he whispered under his breath. Amanda gestured sharply toward Elena. "Ma'am, I'm asking you to step aside. You're blocking boarding." Elena didn't move. "I paid for this seat," she said softly, her eyes steady. "If there's a glitch, that's on your system, not me." Her calm tone unsettled Amanda, who was used to apologies and submission, not quiet confidence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Victor broke the silence again. "Come on, sweetheart," he said smugly. "It's first class, not a handout. Let them handle it." His words drew an audible gasp from a woman across the aisle. Olivia Chen, an Asian-American business executive on her way to Miami for a conference. She turned sharply toward him. "Excuse me," she said. "That's uncalled for." But Victor only smirked. "I'm just saying what we're all thinking." Amanda seemed to take that as backup. "Sir, thank you for your patience," she said sweetly, before turning back to Elena, her tone shifting colder. "Ma'am, Unless you can prove ownership of that ticket right now, I'll have to call security. Elena exhaled slowly. Proof? She held up her phone. My name is right there. Elena Thompson, 1A, Horizon Airways. But Amanda's eyes narrowed. You could have edited that. We've seen people do worse. Her voice grew louder, drawing glances from the jet bridge. Brian looked uneasy. Amanda, maybe it's just the software bug they mentioned this morning. Brian, she snapped. I said verify. Sophia leaned closer to Elena. Should I call it? She whispered. Elena shook her head. No. Let's give her the chance to dig her own grave. It wasn't anger in her voice. It was something deeper, quieter, like exhaustion. Amanda's hand hovered over the intercom. Security to gate B12, she began, but before she could finish, Sophia's tablet beeped. Her fingers flew across the screen. Found it, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The system flagged Elena's name because of a check-in bug. Your crew override caused a duplicate seat assignment. She's the rightful passenger. Amanda's face flushed red. That's not possible. It's right here, Sophia replied, turning the screen for Brian to see. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. She's right. It's a glitch. The system marked Ms. Thompson's seat as invalid by mistake. For a split second, Amanda froze. Then her professionalism cracked. So what? We still have to verify identity. Anyone could. Amanda. A low, steady voice interrupted her. It was Elena's. Calm, unwavering. You've made your judgment the moment you saw me. Let's not pretend this is about security. The air grew thick with silence. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. Jamal's camera captured every expression. Amanda's tightening jaw, Victor's fading smirk, Elena's unshakable composure. Then Amanda leaned in, her voice low but sharp. You people always pull that card when things don't go your way. The words were venom. Every passenger froze. Even Victor looked startled. Elena blinked once, then twice, her lips pressing together. She took a breath. Calm but deliberate. Record that, she said quietly. Sophia nodded. Jamal's camera light blinked red. Amanda's tone softened suddenly, realizing what she'd said aloud. I meant, she began, but Elena cut her off gently. No, you meant every word. Flashback, San Francisco, age 23. Elena standing at a gate, business suit pressed, laptop bag in hand. A clerk smiles politely but firm. Sorry, miss, upgrades are for executives. She had smiled then, too, pretending it didn't sting. Years later, she learned to use that sting as fuel, back in the present. Elena spoke softly, so only Amanda could hear. You just made a career-defining mistake. Brian looked down, shaking his head. Amanda, he whispered, you need to stop. But she didn't. No one tells me how to run my cabin, Amanda said through gritted teeth, at that moment. Captain Mark Donovan appeared from the cockpit, frowning. What's going on here? Amanda straightened quickly. Unauthorized passenger in first class. Captain. Unauthorized, the captain repeated, glancing at Elena. What's her name? Elena Thompson, Amanda said flatly. The captain's face flickered. Recognition, disbelief. Thompson. As in the Thompson who? Yes, Elena said, her tone firm but quiet. The one who helped fund your airline's digital systems 5 years ago? Amanda's eyes widened. Brian stepped back. Victor's smirk evaporated. The entire cabin went still, every sound swallowed by shock. Elena didn't raise her voice, didn't gloat. She simply looked at Amanda with calm clarity. Let's continue this flight, she said. But when we land, we'll finish this conversation. Amanda's hand trembled slightly as she stepped aside. For the first time, her voice cracked. Yes, ma'am. Elena took her seat in 1A, Pulling the seatbelt across her lap as though nothing had happened, Sophia sat quietly behind her. The phone still recording. Jamal whispered to Olivia, "You just witnessed history." And indeed, they had. Because 6 minutes later, that video would begin its climb toward 15 million views, and one flight attendant's prejudice would shake an entire airline to its core. Amanda's face was still pale when the cabin door closed, but her pride refused to bend. She busied herself with trays and towels, pretending nothing had happened, though the tension in the air could be cut with a knife. Elena sat quietly in seat 1A, her gaze fixed ahead, her mind a storm of thoughts she refused to let show. The humiliation lingered, not because of the insult itself, but because of how familiar it felt. She'd seen that same expression before, the raised brows, the skeptical tone, the silent judgment that said, "You don't belong here," beside her. Sophia leaned closer and whispered, "The system logs are saved. I already sent a copy to our server." Elena gave a faint nod. "Good. Let's see how deep this goes." Amanda turned sharply, overhearing the word server. "Excuse me," she snapped. "You're not allowed to record or access company systems during flight. That's tampering with airline property." Sophia looked up calmly. "Tampering? You mean fixing your mistake?" Amanda's lips tightened. "I'll have to report this to corporate." Elena turned her head slightly, her voice smooth but edged. "You won't have to. I'll handle corporate myself." That tone, measured, commanding, sent a chill through Amanda, though she tried to mask it. "Are you threatening me?" she asked. "No," Elena said softly. "I'm promising you accountability." Behind them, passengers began whispering again. The story hadn't ended at the gate. It was unfolding live. In front of a full cabin of witnesses, Jamal Wright's camera, tucked discreetly on his lap, kept recording. He knew a story when he saw one. And this was more than a misunderstanding. It was a mirror reflecting a deeper, uglier truth. Olivia Chen leaned across the aisle toward Rachel Goldstein, the young lawyer beside her. "I've seen this before," Olivia murmured. "They act like the rules protect them, but it's bias wearing a badge." Rachel nodded quietly. "If this gets out, it's going to explode." In the cockpit, Captain Mark Donovan spoke softly into his headset, asking the ground team to verify passenger details. When the reply came through, his face hardened. "Confirmed," he said under his breath. "Elena Thompson, executive shareholder, cleared for priority boarding." He exhaled slowly. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple as the reality sank in. His lead attendant had just humiliated one of the airline's owners on camera. He rose from his seat and walked back toward the cabin. But the confrontation had already evolved. Amanda now stood near the galley, holding a printed manifest like a shield. "I don't care who she says she is," she muttered to Brian, her voice trembling. "I follow protocol. If I let one person slide, I lose control of my cabin." Brian, cautious and weary, glanced toward Elena. "Amanda, listen. You're not losing control. You're making it worse. She's just—" Amanda caught herself before finishing the thought. But Brian knew what she meant. He'd heard the same tone before. Quiet prejudice, hidden behind policy. He wanted to step away, but fear of losing his job rooted him in place. Sophia looked at him then, seeing the guilt in his eyes. "You knew," she said softly. He didn't answer. Amanda clutched her manifest tighter. "I'm calling security again when we land. I'll have proof she violated flight protocol." Her voice shook now, not from anger, but from the realization that her authority had cracked. Elena finally stood, not to argue, but to speak, to everyone. "Let's be clear," she said, her tone calm but cutting through the cabin. "This isn't about one seat. This is about how some people think respect has a dress code." A few passengers lowered their heads, ashamed. Others nodded in agreement. Victor Hayes scoffed. "You're overreacting," he muttered, sipping his champagne. "You got your seat, didn't you? Why keep making a scene?" Elena looked at him, her eyes steady. "Because silence protects the comfortable, and I stopped protecting them a long time ago." Her words hit like a quiet thunderclap. Jamal captured it all, whispering to himself. "That's the headline." Amanda rolled her eyes, but something in her face betrayed unease. "You think you can come in here and lecture us on respect?" she snapped. "You people love to play the victim when things don't go your way." Sophia shot up from her seat. "Excuse me?" she said sharply. "You people?" Amanda froze again, realizing too late how those words sounded. "That's not what I meant," she stammered. "I just meant passengers who—" "You meant exactly what you said," Elena interrupted. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Every word carried the weight of truth. "And I've heard it my whole life." Flashback. New York, age 25. Elena, fresh from a meeting, walking into a corporate lobby. The receptionist smiles at her and says, "Delivery goes through the back." She had laughed it off then, saying she was there for a meeting with the board. The man's face had turned red, his apology hollow. Back then, she'd swallowed her pride. Today, she wouldn't. The intercom beeped suddenly. Captain Donovan's voice echoed through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We'll be departing shortly. Please remain seated as we complete final checks." His tone was calm, but those who knew the situation sensed the tension beneath it. Amanda stood stiffly, avoiding eye contact with Elena. She adjusted her uniform again, as if straightening her clothes could fix the crumbling image of control. Brian handed her a water bottle, whispering, "Just let it go. She's not who you think she is." Amanda shook her head. "You think she scares me? I've dealt with worse." But her hands trembled as she said it. From his seat, Victor chuckled quietly. "You'll both forget about this by Miami," he said smugly. "People always move on." Jamal glanced at him. "That's what people said about George Floyd. We didn't move on then, and we won't now." Victor's smirk faltered. The cabin grew quiet again. The engines roared to life outside, but inside, every heartbeat seemed louder. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the hum of the aircraft. Beneath the frustration, there was purpose. A quiet fire that had lived in her since the day her father died, waiting for help that never came. She remembered his voice, the last thing he told her in that hospital bed years ago. "Never let them decide who you are." As the plane began to taxi, Amanda made one last attempt to regain control. "Ma'am," she said coldly, "if you continue recording, I'll have to report it as a disturbance." Sophia looked her dead in the eye. "Do that, and I'll forward this footage to every news outlet in the country." Amanda hesitated, for the first time. Fear flickered in her eyes. Then Captain Donovan stepped out of the cockpit again, his voice stern. "Amanda," he said, "I just got off the line with corporate. Ms. Thompson's credentials were verified. She's not only a passenger, she's one of our major shareholders." The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda's hand fell from her hip. Brian's eyes widened. Victor's jaw slackened. "Shareholder?" he repeated in disbelief. Donovan nodded. 35%. Amanda's mouth opened, but no words came out. Elena looked up, her tone gentle but firm. "You see, Amanda, you didn't just question a passenger. You questioned the very principles your company claims to stand for." The captain cleared his throat, his voice tight. "Ms. Thompson, on behalf of the crew, I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding," Elena replied. It's a mirror, and now everyone's seen the reflection. Jamal's camera kept rolling as Amanda stepped back, her authority crumbling under the weight of truth. Outside. The plane lifted off the runway, climbing into the clouds, but inside. Something else was rising too, a storm of accountability that no one could escape. The moment the plane reached cruising altitude, the air in the first-class cabin felt charged, thick with unspoken shame, quiet defiance, and a tension that could no longer be ignored. Amanda tried to maintain composure, her lips pursed and movements stiff, but everyone could see her trembling hands as she poured water for passengers who no longer met her eyes. The authority she once wielded had vanished, replaced by whispers and sidelong glances. Elena sat silently in seat 1A, back straight, hands folded neatly in her lap, to anyone else. She looked calm, but inside. Every breath came with a quiet pulse of anger and restraint. She'd been here before, judged, belittled, humiliated for existing in spaces people didn't think she belonged in. But this time, something inside her had shifted. The humiliation wasn't going to end here. It was about to expose an entire system that had fed on silent injustice. Sophia leaned forward from seat 2A, speaking just above a whisper. Corporate just sent an internal alert about the incident, she said, showing her phone discreetly. They're trying to control the damage before it spreads. Elena's jaw tightened. Let them try, she murmured. But they'll learn you can't control truth. Amanda overheard enough to sense she was losing her grip. Ms. Thompson, she said coldly, trying to sound professional. I must remind you that recording or discussing company issues during flight violates Horizon's confidentiality policies. Elena turned her head slowly, meeting Amanda's gaze with quiet precision. You've spent your career hiding behind policy, she said softly. Let's see how it feels when policy hides behind you. The words landed like ice. Amanda blinked, unsure how to respond. Victor Hayes chuckled bitterly from 1B, trying to deflect the pressure. She's not wrong, but honestly, what's the big deal? It's just a misunderstanding that got out of hand. Elena's eyes shifted toward him, calm yet piercing. It's not a misunderstanding when it's repeated across generations, she said. It's a pattern, Victor scoffed. You can't call everything racism. No, Elena replied evenly. But when it walks like it, talks like it, and hides behind authority like it, it's not a coincidence. The words silenced the cabin again. Olivia Chen glanced toward Rachel Goldstein, who was quietly jotting notes on her tablet. Are you documenting this? Olivia whispered. Every word, Rachel said. This is evidence. At that moment, the cockpit door opened slightly. Captain Mark Donovan emerged, his face tight with unease. He looked directly at Elena. Ms. Thompson, he said quietly. Corporate has requested a verification call with you. They've also asked that I ensure the cabin remains calm. His tone was professional but cautious. He understood who she was now, and that knowledge weighed heavily on him. Elena nodded once. Patch them through, she said. The captain gestured to the in-flight communication panel near the galley. Sophia stood to assist, connecting Elena's encrypted phone through the onboard Wi-Fi system. The sound of the secure line buzzing filled the silence. A voice answered. A woman's, stern but anxious. This is Dr. Naomi Brooks, she said. Elena, I've been briefed. Are you safe? Amanda's head snapped toward the sound of that name. Dr. Naomi Brooks was not just another shareholder. She was a member of the airline's ethics committee and one of Elena's closest allies. Elena's tone was calm but clipped. I'm fine, Naomi, but you need to know something. The problem isn't the glitch, it's the people using it to justify discrimination. Naomi exhaled heavily on the other end. I know. We've been fighting this behind the scenes for months. There are internal complaints that never reach the board. 8 of them, all flagged unsubstantiated. And now I think I know why. Suppressed? Elena asked quietly. Yes, Naomi said. Someone in leadership has been burying bias complaints to protect the company's safety rating metrics. Too many would trigger FAA oversight. The revelation hit hard. Elena's expression darkened. Not in anger, but in clarity. Send me the files, she said. No, Elena, Naomi warned. If I send them now, they'll know it came from me. I'll forward them when you land. But I need you to stay calm. Corporate is panicking. Amanda, pretending to clean, was listening closely. Her heart pounded. She realized that what began as a petty act of judgment had just exploded into a corporate scandal. She stepped closer, voice shaky. I didn't know, she whispered. It's not what it looks like. Elena looked up at her, eyes steady and unreadable. You saw me, Amanda, she said, and you decided what I was worth based on that image. That's exactly what this company has been doing for years. Amanda opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Brian Foster stood silently near the galley, guilt etched across his face. She's right, he said suddenly. Everyone turned to him. This isn't the first time something like this happened. I've seen attendants questioned for helping passengers who didn't look wealthy enough. We were told to just follow protocol, to avoid trouble. Amanda's eyes widened. Brian, stop, she hissed. You'll get us both fired. Maybe we deserve it, Brian said, his voice trembling. We let this culture keep going because we were afraid to speak. Jamal's camera caught every word, his journalist's instinct sharper than ever. Would you go on record? He asked softly. Brian hesitated, then nodded. If it means things change. Olivia reached across the aisle, touching his arm gently. That's courage, she said. It's never too late to do what's right. Amanda slumped slightly, the weight of reality crashing down. I didn't mean harm, she murmured. I was just following the rules. Elena sighed, her voice no longer cold but reflective. That's the danger of rules written without empathy. They teach people to obey without thinking, to enforce without understanding. For the first time, Amanda didn't argue. She just stood there, shoulders heavy, eyes on the floor. I've been working here 18 years, she said quietly. One mistake and I'm done. Elena looked at her, then at the watching passengers. It's not one mistake, she said softly. It's a mindset, and unless we confront it, it'll keep destroying people's dignity, one flight at a time. Her words settled like truth in every heart. Even Victor, the loudest critic moments ago, looked down at his hands, unsure what to say. The intercom beeped again. Captain Donovan's voice returned. We've received a request from Horizon's main office to document all passenger statements and send a report before landing. His tone was uneasy. He understood that this was no longer a local issue. It was national. Naomi's voice came through the line one last time. Elena, when you land, you'll have full authority to act. The board's watching. They'll deny knowledge. But once the footage hits the public, they can't hide. Then let's give them something they can't ignore, Elena said calmly. Thank you. Naomi. She hung up, then turned back toward Amanda. You said earlier you wanted to report me. Go ahead. Let's both file reports, yours about a dress code, and mine about systemic discrimination. The passengers exchanged glances. Quiet admiration replacing judgment. Jamal whispered to Sophia. This isn't just a story. It's history unfolding in real time. Sophia nodded. And it's only the beginning. As the plane cut through the clouds, the world below oblivious. The balance of power inside that cabin had shifted completely. The woman they had doubted minutes ago now commanded not just the room, but the truth. And though Amanda didn't yet know it, the recording from this flight would soon be the headline on every major network in the country. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the flight settled mid-air. But there was no peace in that silence, only the heavy hum of consequence beginning to unfold. Amanda Klein stood by the galley, pale and motionless, her uniform immaculate yet meaningless now. The authority she'd built her identity around had collapsed like glass under pressure. She looked at Elena, seated calmly in 1A, and saw not a passenger, but the reckoning of everything she had ignored for years. The phone in Elena's hand buzzed softly. Sophia leaned closer, reading the incoming message. "It's from Tyler Jenkins," she whispered. Elena's brows furrowed. "Tyler? The former compliance officer?" Sophia nodded. "He says he has evidence. Emails proving Horizon's leadership suppressed 8 bias complaints this quarter alone." Elena exhaled slowly, her tone barely above a whisper. "Then this isn't just a single incident. It's a system built on silence." She opened the message, and there they were, screenshots of internal memos, directives marked urgent, do not escalate. Each one carried the signature of Horizon's senior operations manager. Amanda watched from a distance, dread creeping into her chest as the realization dawned. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about a company built on denial, and her name was about to be the face of it. "Sophia," Elena said calmly, "save those attachments. Make 3 encrypted copies." Sophia's fingers moved fast, her expression focused. Jamal, still filming discreetly, captured the moment without interruption. He knew what this footage meant now. It wasn't just a viral clip of injustice. It was evidence of systemic rot at the top of one of America's largest airlines. Amanda finally spoke, her voice thin and brittle. "Ms. Thompson, I didn't know about any of this. I was just following procedures." Elena turned slightly, her tone measured but edged with sorrow. "That's the problem. Amanda, procedures built on prejudice don't excuse the people who enforce them. Fear doesn't absolve cruelty." Amanda's lips trembled. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If we don't enforce policy, we get written up. If I lose this job, I lose everything, my kid, my home." "And how many people have lost their dignity because of that same fear?" Elena interrupted gently. "How many passengers have been treated like suspects, just to keep your own record clean?" Amanda blinked, tears welling for the first time, but Elena's tone remained steady. She wasn't angry anymore. She was resolute. The rest of the cabin sat in quiet awe, watching the invisible line between justice and grace being drawn. Brian Foster stood beside Amanda, guilt etched deep into his face. "She's right," he said quietly. "We all knew things were wrong, but nobody wanted to risk their job to speak up." "And yet," Elena said, "you both already did, just not out loud. You complied with silence." The words hit harder than shouting ever could. Brian lowered his head. Amanda's breathing quickened. "Please," she said softly, "don't end my career over this. I didn't mean harm." Elena studied her for a moment, then exhaled. "Amanda, what you did was unacceptable. But the truth is, I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to fix what created you." Those words stunned the cabin. Even Victor Hayes, who had spent most of the flight smirking in condescension, now sat quietly, realizing he was witnessing something beyond scandal, a woman turning humiliation into leadership. Captain Donovan appeared again from the cockpit, holding a satellite phone. "Ms. Thompson," he said carefully, "corporate wants to speak with you directly. They're concerned about what's happening on social media." Elena glanced toward Jamal, whose phone screen was now glowing with notifications. "The video's already spreading," he said. Over 100,000 views, and counting. Amanda's face drained of color. "Oh my God," she whispered. The captain handed the phone to Elena. On the other end was a trembling voice. "Miss Thompson, this is Richard Hale, Chief Operations Officer of Horizon Airways. First, let me say how deeply sorry we are for this misunderstanding." "Stop calling it a misunderstanding," Elena said evenly. "You've had 8 bias complaints this quarter. How many did you bury?" There was a pause, heavy and suffocating. I'm not sure what you're referring to." "Don't lie," she said. "I have the emails. Tyler Jenkins sent them. Your people suppressed reports to protect your metrics. You've been teaching employees to hide discrimination, not fix it." Silence. Then a nervous exhale. "Ms. Thompson, please, we can discuss this privately after you land." "No," Elena interrupted. "We'll discuss it in front of everyone." She switched the phone to speaker mode and set it on the armrest. The entire cabin could hear the executive now, his voice cracking under pressure. "Elena, please, this isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," she said firmly. "Because the humiliation started here, in this cabin, with witnesses who saw how your culture operates," Victor whispered. "She's taking them apart mid-flight," Olivia replied quietly. "No, she's holding them accountable mid-flight." Elena leaned closer to the phone. "Richard, I'm invoking my rights as a major shareholder, effective immediately. Amanda Klein is terminated for cause. Brian Foster will be disciplined and reassigned to compliance training, and you will prepare a full audit of all employee complaints within 48 hours. There was a gasp from Amanda, a silence from Richard, and a ripple of astonished murmurs across the cabin. "Elena," Richard stammered. "You can't." "I can," she replied calmly. "And I just did. This company has hidden behind policy for too long. That ends today." She hung up the phone without waiting for a response. The cabin remained utterly silent. The hum of the engines the only sound. Amanda's face went blank, the shock overtaking her voice. "You can't just—" "I can," Elena said again, her tone still soft, almost compassionate. "Because justice doesn't wait for permission." She turned slightly toward Brian. "You'll get a second chance, but next time, speak up before someone has to record it." Brian nodded, tears forming in his eyes. Amanda looked at her, defeated, her voice breaking. "What happens to me now?" Elena hesitated, then said quietly, "You learn, you face the mirror, and you decide if the person staring back is who you want your child to see." Amanda's breath hitched, the weight of those words heavier than any punishment. Captain Donovan, who had been standing silently, finally spoke. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice subdued. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have seen what was happening sooner." Elena looked at him, her expression softening. "Then see it now. Don't look away next time." He nodded solemnly. As the plane descended toward Miami, the clouds parting below, Jamal whispered to Sophia, "This footage, it's going to change everything." Sophia glanced at Elena, her calm presence against the glowing horizon. "It already has." Amanda sat alone, trembling, the reality sinking in. She wasn't just losing a job, she was facing herself for the first time, and somewhere deep down, she knew Elena was right. Justice wasn't revenge, it was revelation. By the time the plane's wheels touched down on Miami's runway, every passenger knew they had just witnessed something far greater than a confrontation. They had seen truth strip power bare, and in its place, something cleaner was beginning to rise. As the plane leveled into its smooth descent toward Miami, a strange quiet settled over the cabin. Not peace, but reflection. Everyone aboard Horizon Airways, Flight 134, understood they had just witnessed something historic. Amanda sat frozen by the galley, her face pale and hands trembling, clutching a folded napkin like it could hold her dignity together. Brian Foster stared out the window, his conscience heavier than the clouds below. Elena Thompson, however, remained still, her gaze fixed on the horizon ahead. It wasn't victory she felt. It was responsibility. Sophia leaned toward her, voice soft but urgent. Elena, the internal server's buzzing. Naomi just sent an encrypted link. It's worse than we thought. Elena's eyes narrowed. Show me. On Sophia's tablet glowed a string of files, each labeled Complaint Suppression, Confidential. Every document detailed stories like hers, passengers humiliated, attendants pressured to cover up, supervisors rewarding silence with bonuses. One note from an executive chilled her the most. Keep bias cases under 10 per quarter. FAA flags jeopardize our ratings. Elena stared at it, her pulse steady. They turned prejudice into policy. Jamal Wright, filming quietly from his seat, zoomed in on the reflection of the tablet screen, knowing what he captured wasn't just evidence. It was history. Amanda, overhearing bits of their conversation, stepped forward weakly. Please, Miss Thompson, she whispered. I didn't know any of that. I swear. I was just following training. Elena turned toward her, her expression calm but cutting. That's exactly why it's so dangerous. The system doesn't need villains when obedience does the work. Amanda looked like she might collapse, her authority now reduced to remorse. Olivia Chen, who had remained quiet for most of the flight, finally spoke. She's not lying, she said gently. I work in corporate consulting. This happens everywhere. Bias reports get adjusted to protect image. It's like a silent agreement nobody questions. Rachel Goldstein, seated beside her, nodded. And that's why most victims give up. They know the system is designed to outlast their outrage. Elena looked between them, absorbing every word. Then it ends here, she said softly. Not with revenge, but with reform. The intercom chimed. Captain Donovan's voice steady but subdued. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our descent into Miami shortly. Please remain seated. His tone carried something new. Humility. The arrogance from earlier was gone. He'd seen too much truth in one flight to pretend authority meant righteousness. As the cabin prepared for landing, Naomi Brooks's voice came through Elena's phone, routed through a private channel. Elena, she said quickly, I just got confirmation. Those files were intentionally deleted from the compliance archives. But our copy is intact. You have full shareholder authority to announce investigation proceedings the moment you land. Elena's jaw tightened. And the leadership? Panic, Naomi replied. Half the board's trying to draft a statement before the video goes viral. But there's one more thing. Tyler Jenkins traced the suppression order. It came directly from Richard Hale's office. The name landed like thunder. Richard Hale, the same COO who had tried to smooth things over an hour ago. He knew, Elena whispered. He's been signing off on discrimination audits while burying real data. Sophia looked up. Then he's the root. No, Elena said quietly. He's the rot. The root is culture. Amanda flinched at the word. Culture, she repeated softly, as if tasting guilt for the first time. I was part of that culture. You still are, Elena said. But now you decide if you'll stay that way. Amanda swallowed hard, tears brimming. I thought being strict meant being fair. They taught us that professionalism meant keeping control. But all I did was lose my humanity. Elena didn't answer, but her silence spoke volumes. Sophia's phone buzzed again. Naomi just posted the statement, she whispered. It's out. Within minutes, the ripple began. Jamal's live stream, which had started with a few hundred viewers, now showed 50,000 watching in real time. Comments flooded in from across the country. Unbelievable. Fire that flight attendant. That CEO is changing history. And beneath them, one that made Elena's chest tighten. This isn't revenge, it's redemption. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. The clouds gave way to sunlight, the Miami skyline glimmering ahead. Yet she knew this landing wasn't an ending. It was the start of a storm that would sweep through boardrooms and headlines. Brian turned toward her quietly. "Ma'am, I want to testify. I can't stay silent anymore." Elena met his eyes. "You don't owe me that. You owe it to yourself." He nodded, his face heavy with determination. "Amanda," her voice breaking, whispered, "What happens to me?" Elena paused. "You face accountability, but you'll have a chance to rebuild. Whether you take it or not, that's up to you." Amanda nodded slowly, tears spilling over, her arrogance dissolved into quiet shame. Olivia turned toward the others. "She'll never forget this," she said. "None of us will." The landing gear began to lower, the rumble vibrating through the floor. Rachel leaned across the aisle, eyes on Elena. "What will you do when we land?" Elena looked toward the window, her reflection framed by the glow of Miami's afternoon light. "I'll build something this airline should have had from the beginning. Accountability with compassion." The words felt like a vow. Naomi's voice crackled back through the phone. "We'll call it the Fair Sky Policy," she said. "Mandatory retraining for every employee, an independent audit, and a reporting system outside corporate control." "Good," Elena said. "No more hidden folders, no more excuses," Amanda whispered. "And me?" Elena turned back. "You'll be the first case under Fair Sky, mandatory rehabilitation and ethics counseling. You'll learn the damage of bias from the other side." Amanda's eyes filled again, but this time, she nodded. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For not hating me." Elena's voice softened. "Hate fixes nothing. Truth does." The wheels touched down, screeching against the tarmac, the sound like punctuation on an unspoken sentence. Passengers exhaled collectively, some clapping quietly, not out of habit. But relief. Captain Donovan's voice returned, calm and solemn. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Miami International Airport. On behalf of Horizon Airways, we thank you for flying with us." There was irony in those words. Everyone knew Horizon had changed forever somewhere over the clouds. As the seatbelt sign chimed off, Jamal whispered into his phone camera, "You just witnessed the moment one woman turned humiliation into history." The comment section exploded with praise, disbelief, and gratitude. Amanda stood frozen near the galley, unsure whether to walk away or apologize one last time. Elena approached her, her steps slow but certain. "Amanda," she said softly, "this could have been just another day, but you chose to confront your reflection, and that's where change begins." Amanda nodded weakly, her lips quivering. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "not for getting caught, for not knowing better." Elena placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then start learning now." When the cabin doors opened, the humid Miami air swept in like freedom. Security officers waited near the gate, but not for confrontation. This time, they stood ready to escort Elena to a press briefing Naomi had arranged as she stepped onto the jet bridge, Sophia at her side. The passengers watched silently. They weren't watching a CEO. They were watching justice in motion. Behind her, Amanda sank into a seat, tears falling freely, realizing that what Elena had given her wasn't punishment. It was mercy, and mercy, she understood too late, was the rarest kind of justice. The humid Miami air clung to the glass walls of the terminal as Elena Thompson stepped off Flight 134, flanked by Sofia Ramirez and two airport security officers who now acted less like guards and more like quiet escorts of history. Word of the incident had already outpaced the plane itself by the time her heels touched the polished floor of Miami International. The video had reached 2 million views. Cameras flashed from the terminal entrance. Reporters, passengers, and even employees stared in stunned silence, some whispering her name as if it carried new meaning. Elena didn't bask in the attention. Her face was calm, almost solemn. As she walked through the corridor, a woman carrying the weight of both power and purpose. Within an hour, she was seated inside a private conference room at Horizon's Miami Operations Center. Across from her sat 3 executives from corporate, faces pale, expressions hollow. They'd watched the footage. They'd seen the arrogance, the humiliation, the truth unfold live. "Ms. Thompson," began Richard Hale, the COO whose voice had once been confident but now cracked under pressure. "The board has convened an emergency session. They want to know how you wish to proceed." Elena leaned back, her eyes unwavering. "Proceed?" she repeated softly. "We proceed with the truth. We proceed with reform." She pulled out her tablet, laying it on the table. "The Fair Sky policy begins now. 45 days of mandatory retraining for every staff member. From ground crew to management, a 12-month audit of every bias complaint filed in the last 5 years, and a full transparency report made public." Hale swallowed hard. "That's drastic," he muttered. "It'll disrupt operations." "Disruption," Elena said coldly, "is the price of justice." He said nothing. The others in the room avoided her gaze. "Amanda Klein," she continued, "has been terminated for cause. But she'll have access to Horizon's new rehabilitation program, a chance to rebuild through education and service. Brian Foster will assist in implementing Fair Sky. He's the only one who showed remorse before being told to—" Her words carried no malice, only resolve. She'd already seen too much of what punishment without purpose created. Sophia handed her a folder. "The FAA has also opened an inquiry," she said. "They've requested your statement." Elena nodded. "They'll have it, and they'll have the video. Every frame." Hale winced. "Do you realize what this could cost us? Stockholders will panic. The media. Stockholders will adapt." Elena interrupted sharply. "People can't trust what hides behind silence anymore." She turned toward Sophia. "Contact Naomi. Begin the public rollout within 12 hours. We don't wait for approval. We lead by example." Outside the conference room, the world was already changing. Horizon's social media feeds flooded with comments, some furious, others inspired. "CEO stands up for justice mid-flight. Horizon Airways faces its reckoning. Fair Sky, a new dawn for aviation ethics." Jamal Wright's footage played on every major network. Amanda's tearful apology, captured on the tarmac before she was escorted out, became the final frame, symbolizing both guilt and redemption. A week later, Amanda's face reappeared, not in disgrace, but in humility, speaking publicly about her mistake during a televised statement. "I was wrong," she said, voice trembling, "not just for what I did, but for what I represented. I confused authority with worth, and I let fear dictate compassion. Thanks to Ms. Thompson, I'm learning the difference." The country listened. Some condemned her, but many saw something greater, a glimpse of change that didn't end in destruction, but in awakening. Meanwhile, Elena's Fair Sky policy swept across the company. Every manager, every attendant, every pilot was retrained under a new mandate: equality, empathy, and accountability. Employees who once enforced silence now had tools to speak. Within 2 months, bias complaints dropped by 60% and employee satisfaction soared. The story became a case study in every business school in the nation. How one woman turned a 6-minute humiliation into a blueprint for reform. Yet behind the progress. Elena remained reflective. Late one evening in her Miami office, she gazed out the window at the runway lights flickering below. Sophia entered quietly, holding a tablet. "Another update," she said softly. "Customer satisfaction up 25% since the policy launch. You did it." Elena smiled faintly. "We did it," she corrected. Her eyes softened. "And now it's time to make it bigger." "Bigger?" Sophia asked. "Beyond Horizon," Elena said. "Every airline, every corporation that hides behind policy needs to face the same mirror. Fair Sky isn't just for us. It's for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong." Sophia smiled. "Your father would be proud." The mention of him drew silence, warm and lingering. Elena looked toward the night sky beyond the glass. "He taught me that justice isn't about punishment," she said quietly. "It's about repair." Outside, a Horizon jet took off, its tail gleaming against the dark. The name Horizon itself had changed meaning, no longer a brand, but a promise. And as Elena watched it rise, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else, "We've only just taken off." 3 months later, Horizon Airways had become something the world no longer recognized, a company reborn through accountability. What began as a scandal mid-air had transformed into a movement spanning continents. The Fair Sky policy had not only retrained employees, but reshaped an entire industry. Airlines across the country adopted similar reforms, while the FAA, once silent on systemic discrimination, launched a nationwide review of aviation ethics inside Horizon's Chicago headquarters. Elena Thompson walked through the bright, glass-walled atrium, every face that met hers now carrying a quiet respect instead of suspicion. Reporters called her the CEO who grounded bias. But Elena never embraced the title. She wasn't chasing praise, she was building permanence. "It's working," Sophia said, handing her a new report. "Complaint resolutions are faster. Cabin diversity has doubled. Customer loyalty is up by 30%. Elena smiled faintly. "It's a start," she said. "But we're not done." In that moment, Tyler Jenkins entered the room, his once worried face now calm, confident. "I finished the audit," he said, placing a folder on her desk. "You were right. The suppression wasn't limited to passengers. It reached into hiring, promotions, even route assignments. They were choosing image over integrity." Elena nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the document. "Then we fix it all," she said. "Not just for the company, but for the people who were told to stay quiet." Tyler looked at her, emotion glinting behind his tired eyes. "You gave me a second chance, Elena. You didn't have to." She smiled gently. "Second chances are how we rebuild trust." Outside the office windows, a massive banner unfurled across Horizon's headquarters. "Fairski, equality takes flight." The image of a black woman in a pilot's uniform smiling at a young passenger became the company's new emblem, symbolizing the future Elena had fought for. Meanwhile, across the nation, Amanda Klein's story had shifted from disgrace to redemption. She now spoke publicly at Horizon's ethics workshops, sharing her own experience of bias and fear. "I lost my job," she told a group of new trainees, her voice trembling. "But I found my humanity. I thought respect was something you earned by controlling others. Now I know it's something you give." The audience listened, captivated. Amanda's transformation had become one of the Fair Sky program's greatest lessons. That justice could heal, not just punish. Even Victor Hayes, the once arrogant businessman who mocked Elena that day, reached out privately months later. His company had gone bankrupt, his reputation scarred, but his message was simple. I learned too late that prejudice is the most expensive mistake you can make. Elena never replied, but she smiled faintly when she read it. Some lessons didn't need acknowledgement. They just needed to echo. As winter sunlight poured across the city, Elena boarded a Horizon jet bound for New York, seat 1A. The same seat she'd been denied months before was hers again, this time. The flight attendants greeted her with warm smiles, genuine and unforced. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Thompson," one of them said, offering her a cup of tea. "It's an honor to have you." She thanked them kindly and settled into her seat, gazing through the oval window as the city shrank below. Beside her sat Jamal Wright, the journalist whose video had changed the course of history. "You know," he said with a grin, "I never thought I'd see an airline become a symbol of justice." Elena chuckled softly. "Neither did I," she said. "But sometimes the storm you survive becomes the wind that carries you forward." Jamal tilted his phone toward her. "The Fair Sky documentary's premiering next week. Over 10 million views already." "Good," she said simply. "Let people see what change looks like when you stop running from the truth." The plane cruised through the clouds, the hum of the engines blending with quiet reflection, for a brief moment. Elena closed her eyes and thought of her father, the man who died because someone once thought he wasn't worth urgent care. That loss had carved a wound she'd carried for years, but today, that pain had found its purpose. Justice, she realized, wasn't about balance. It was about building something better from the broken. As the captain announced their descent, Sophia leaned forward from the row behind her. "Elena, the board approved your new foundation, the Fair Sky Fund. It'll support victims of workplace bias and fund youth programs for diversity in aviation." Elena turned slightly, her expression warm. "Then maybe the next generation won't have to fight as hard as we did." The plane touched down softly on the runway, the horizon outside glowing gold in the morning light. Passengers applauded, not out of habit this time, but gratitude, one woman whispered. "That's her, the one who changed everything." Elena smiled faintly, not for fame, but for peace. As she gathered her things, Jamal's voice echoed behind her. "Elena, one last question. For the film, what does justice mean to you now?" She paused in the aisle, the sunlight spilling over her shoulders. "Justice," she said slowly, "isn't about revenge or pride. It's about making sure no one is ever denied their seat in life again." She walked out of the plane with calm dignity, the cameras flashing once more. But this time, she wasn't just a CEO, she was a symbol of what happens when courage meets compassion. And as she stepped onto the jet bridge, her voice lingered like a promise to everyone who would ever face prejudice in silence. "The sky belongs to everyone. Thank you so much for watching this story." If it moved you, take a moment to subscribe, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes in justice and compassion. Every story we tell reminds the world that change begins with truth, and that your voice matters.